Take a deep breath, take the higher road. That's what they always say, as if they know the way. They won't take it from me. But don't ever doubt yourself, 'cause life ain't just a dream. You made your own, so kick and scream. The people will act with a never-ending force. You never had the chance, so what you waiting for? The day has come, my friend, 'cause this is war. It's time and this is war.
There are moments in life that crack you open, and nothing is ever the same again. For countless families across this country, that moment came during the COVID era. Not just because of the virus, but because of what was done in the name of public health. We were told to trust the science, but what many of us witnessed behind closed hospital doors was not science. It was protocol-driven medicine, void of humanity. Families locked out, patients silenced, informed consent ignored. Dangerous drugs like remdesivir pushed as first-line treatment, while time-tested alternatives were ridiculed or outright banned. We've heard it over and over again. They wouldn't let me see him. They told me I had no choice. They said I wasn't allowed to question it. This was not medicine. This was coercion, and it broke something deep in our collective trust. But in the rubble of all of that loss, there are stories of hope, stories of unexplainable healing, stories of warriors who refused to give up even when every odd was stacked against them. Today, we're going to talk about what happens when love refuses to surrender, when faith outlasts fear, and when the human spirit proves stronger than the machine. If you've ever doubted the power of prayer, the strength of human will, or the need to hold this broken system accountable, this is an episode you need to hear. You're listening to Nurses Out Loud on America Out Loud Talk Radio. I'm your host, Nurse Kimberly Overton. Before we get started today, I do want to encourage our listeners, if you have questions or comments, or perhaps you want to share your own experiences with what you're seeing on the front lines of healthcare, you can now submit those to us directly by visiting our website at nursesoutloud.com. We would love to hear from you. We encourage all of you to engage in the battle and find your voice in this fight. But until you're able to do that, we will continue to be that voice for you. My guest today is a warrior in every sense of the word. When her vibrant, athletic husband, Drew, walked into the hospital in 2021 with COVID, she had no idea he'd be trapped in what she now calls the COVID prison, a place where family was barred from visiting, where remdesivir was administered without full informed consent, and where the unvaccinated were treated as expendable. Drew was placed on a ventilator for 70 days. He spent 28 of those days in a coma. He lost 100 pounds. He came out paralyzed and in a wheelchair, but by the grace of God, he came home. This is a story of grit, of faith, and of a woman who refused to let the system write the final chapter of her husband's life. She has poured her soul into a powerful memoir that documents the horror they endured and the miracle that defied every medical prediction. I have no doubt it will bring comfort to many and serve as a warning to all. Maria Brophy is an art business consultant, speaker, and author of 8 books, including the Amazon bestseller, Art, Money, and Success. For over 25 years, she's represented her husband, surf artist Drew Brophy, playing a key role in bringing his artwork to the world stage. Together, they own an art gallery in Southern California. After recovering from Drew's near-death experience in 2021, Maria wrote her first memoir, COVID, A Love Story, a gripping account of hospitals, ventilators, and the COVID protocols that many are still too traumatized to speak about. Together, Maria and Drew are witnesses to one of the darkest chapters of the pandemic, and they are using their story to shed light, offer hope, and inspire much-needed change. Maria, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for all the work you're doing to shed light on ways that we can better handle medical situations. I mean, the entire medical system needs to
Yeah.
be started over.
Yeah. No, say it like I do. Burn it to the ground. I've been trying to say that in a nicer way, but it just doesn't come across as well, I guess.
Burn it to the ground.
I've been saying
Oh my
that for about
gosh.
5 years now, and they were like, "You need to tone it down a little bit." I said, "But why? It's true, you know." But thank you. I'm excited to have you here. I know we've been kind of talking about having you on for a little while. We were able to make it happen. So I'm glad to have you here to share this incredible story. But I want to take it back, if you will, just kind of before all of this began, and just share a little bit about what life was like for you and Drew prior to all of this.
Drew and I have spent 30, almost 30 years together. And prior to him catching COVID, um, we spent over 20 years running a business together and traveling the world. We're both very active. We hike mountains, we paddleboard rivers, we surf places all over the world, and we raised our son and our niece to do all those things with us. So that was our life, was nonstop adventure and action. And when we both caught COVID, we were on probably our 13th drive across country from the East Coast back to California, where we live, when we both got sick. And it changed everything.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to just jump into that?
Sure. Absolutely. Jump right in there.
Okay. Okay. So Drew and I got sick on our drive back from the East Coast, and we really don't even know how we got COVID because it was fairly winding down pretty much. People weren't really wearing masks anymore. This was November of 2021.
Mm.
And when we got home from our trip, we were both so sick. For me, it went to my brain, and I lost part of my hearing and my taste and my smell. But for him, it went to his lungs and his stomach. So I had a COVID kit with all the remedies, including echinacea and remdes, or I'm sorry, and oh my God,
Ivermectin.
ivermectin and quercetin. I just had this whole kit put together for a couple years just in case. And finally, we got it, and I started taking the remedies, but I tried to give them to Drew. He kept throwing them up. And so I got better, but he got worse. And one day I walked into the bedroom and he was rolled up in a ball, and I looked at his skin and it was gray. And I just had this knowing that it was bad. And I didn't know what to do. And I was terrified to take him to the hospital because I had heard stories,
Yeah.
people going in the hospital and never coming back. But because I had such bad COVID brain fog, I could not even think. And I took him to urgent care. They did a scan of his chest, and they said, "Oh my God, you've got to take him to the hospital right now." And he and I looked at each other, and we both had this look on our faces like, "Oh no." And the nurse said, "Look, it's okay. They're just going to treat you. You'll be home in a couple days. It's fine." Well, as soon as we pulled up to the ER, there was a nurse waiting for him outside because the urgent care had called ahead. I don't know if they were doing this in other places in the country, but they had called ahead. And so they basically pulled him out of the car and put him in a chair, a wheelchair. I went and parked the car, and then I go to walk into the emergency room, and a guard stops me. And I had never seen a guard at a hospital before. And I thought,
Yeah.
this is weird. Why would you have a guard, like a police guard? It was just odd.
Yeah.
And then, like a security guard. And then they wouldn't let me in, and they wouldn't let me talk to any of the doctors. They wouldn't let me talk to anybody. And they basically, said, "Look, if you don't get out of here, we're going to take you out of here." And so I just sat in my car for hours, and I was trying to get Drew on the phone, and he wouldn't answer his phone. And it was just the most terrifying horrible feeling. And finally, I drove home. And then he did call me later and he said, they admitted me into the COVID unit. And it just went downhill from there.
Mm.
Um, I think what I didn't know then, which I understand more now, the things that happen once they got you into that COVID unit. After I've talked to so many ventilator survivors and also families of people who didn't make it, and I've talked to so many. I joined a lot of groups. I've joined a lot of widow groups, COVID widow groups and so forth. And I've talked to so many people. And one thing, there's a number of things that people don't realize what was happening. And one is that when they put you on oxygen, because your oxygen's low, which Drew had a hypoxia and COVID pneumonia, and that's what they diagnosed him with.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were giving you too much oxygen,
Yeah.
which created more problems. And so we didn't know that at the time, so we didn't know to question it. The other thing is, then the remdesivir, I remembered hearing something bad about it, but I didn't know what because I wasn't staying that close to it. And when the doctor suggested it, it's funny, he suggested it over the phone to me. And it was just hours after a friend had texted me, whatever you do, don't let them give him remdesivir.
Oh,
My
wow.
friend Nicole texted me that, and I texted her back and I said, why? And she texted me back and said, because it's killing people. Now, that's not enough information for me to tell the doctor, yeah, my friend from Tennessee texted me that it's killing people, right? But I did say no to it. I said, no, let's hold off. Well, the next day, the doctor convinced us because he was getting worse. And the doctor said, look, I've administered this remdesivir to 400 to 500 patients. I've only had one patient have a problem with it.
Oh, I find that very hard to believe.
He said, and I wrote down what he said word for word because I was recording everything.
Mhm.
I just obsessively do that in life anyway. And so he told me, and word for word, quote unquote, I only had one person ever have a problem, and this woman's kidneys shut down, and it's a real easy thing to monitor. And we will stop it if Drew has any problems with his kidney or liver.
So he knew.
Well,
He knew they were nephrotoxic and that that it could damage and shut down his organs. That's basically what he was telling you.
but according to him, only one person ever had a problem. What I didn't think to ask was, out of those 400 to 500 patients you administered it to, how many are still alive today? Like,
Exactly.
I didn't think to ask that. I had no idea what I was getting into. Um, so he did get worse. I don't know if it was the remdesivir. All I know is he got worse. He got sicker, and he ended up with holes in his right lung to the point where it was causing, I don't know I forget what it's called, but where the air escapes your lungs and it collects up in your shoulders and your
Oh,
neck.
the subcutaneous air emphysema, subcutaneous
Yes.
emphysema. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when the doctor said, his pulmonologist, Dr. Q, I call him in my book, I changed all the names.
Hmm.
And so Dr. Q said, look, you need to go on the ventilator. If you don't go on the ventilator, you're probably going to die tonight. And we kept saying no to the ventilator. And he said, look, you're either going to go into cardiac arrest or you're going to or you're going to stroke out tonight and I won't be able to save you. Now, at the time, I didn't know what that meant either. What I thought he meant was, it'll be so bad, we'll try to save you, but we can't. But you know what it really meant? The Grace Shara case opened my eyes to what that meant. What it meant was, when you refuse the ventilator, we automatically put a DNR on you.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that happened, that they put a DNR on him, but I do know that's what the doctor said. If you go into cardiac arrest, we won't be able to save you. And I remember thinking how odd, they always save people from a cardiac arrest. Like I just thought that was, I did, something struck me as odd, but I didn't know what. And
Yeah,
now
that
I
and
know.
that's standard of care. If you're a full code in the hospital and you go into cardiac arrest, even when we think, well, this is completely futile, if you want to be a full code, we're doing everything. We're pulling out all the stops to save you. But what was interesting, I wouldn't say, like, at least I can only speak for my experience in the hospital that I worked at. It wasn't that we were necessarily changing people to a DNR, but what I do recall them doing is having the nurses call the family over and over again and pressure them into changing to a DNR.
Yeah, I've talked to
That
many
happened.
widows who were convinced to do that.
Yeah.
Um, I would not do that. And the other thing that I didn't know back then that I know now is that the in the ICU, at least in this hospital he was in, the standards of care in the COVID ICU, the normal ICU standard of care was not followed. It was thrown out the window. One of the nurses told me this.
Yeah, it
She said, "Yeah,
absolutely
we
was.
don't follow the ICU standard of care in the COVID unit. That's why your husband was given these paralytic drugs for weeks that we normally only give for a couple
2 days.
days."
Yeah, 2, 3 days. And the reason they blew holes in his lungs was probably because the settings on his ventilator, the PEEP settings, the positive expiratory end pressure, was probably extremely high that blew out his lungs. We would see PEEPs of like 5 was average. During COVID, we were seeing them at 15, at 20. I mean, it was absolute insanity. We were
I'm
doing
still,
this to these patients.
it's crazy. Like all the things that were done incorrectly. Um, and when you're a wife that loves your husband and your entire life is falling to pieces in front of you, I mean, the panic, the fear, words cannot describe the trauma I went through. And I knew that I was his only chance to survive.
Right.
My choices, my decisions, how I handled myself, how I spoke to the doctors and nurses, I was very careful. I was very careful to kiss their asses while I was being firm and
Mhm.
demanding because I knew I could be cut out. So I was very careful to behave myself because I had talked to other widows who had been tossed out of hospitals, who had been barred by police. And I was not going to let that happen. I knew that I was the only chance, but I didn't know what that meant. Like, I don't know anything. I have no medical background. All I know is that I'm a health nut. So I'm really great with nutrition. I know how to heal myself from a lot of things. That's the one blessing that I had. Um, but I've never had to deal with anybody being in a hospital before, other than my mom had a stroke, and that was the only time I ever had to deal with a hospital, and that was very brief. And so I was like blinded in a blizzard. I had no idea what I was doing. So that's when I started to pray a lot. And I'm not a religious person, but God and Jesus was in my life every minute of the day during this whole ordeal. I needed guidance, and that was what guided me was my prayer and my trust that I could find the answers if I talked to enough people.
Yeah.
And that's what I started doing. I started calling all the people I knew personally that either were doctors or had friends that were doctors that were saving people or that had the same belief that I did that the body can heal when you give it what it needs. Um, and so I probably should back up to the story where he had these holes in his lungs, and the doctor said, "Look, we're not going to be able to save you. You're going to die probably tonight."
Wow.
And Drew said, "Well, doc, if I go on the ventilator, what are my chances?" And the doctor literally said, "Not good."
Yeah,
And he
no,
said,
they know
but
that going
what?
in. 80% did not come
He,
off the ventilator. They knew that going in.
well, the doctor told him less than 20%. That's what
Yeah.
the doctor told him.
Yeah.
And Drew said, "Well, I'm going to fight this." So that first day, Drew said no to the ventilator. And by the way, he had told his whole medical team, "My wife makes all my decisions for me." That was the only decision that he made on his own because I told him, "I'm not touching that one. You decide
Mhm.
if you're going on the vent." So that first night, we stayed on FaceTime all night. I had him in the bed with me on FaceTime, and it was just horrible because he could barely talk. And we were so afraid. And it was the first time in the 25 years I knew him that he ever said he was scared. Because Drew's a badass. He's an athlete. He's like the strongest man I've ever known. Um, and he's never been afraid of anything. He's never had an anxiety attack in his life until this. He's a badass.
Yeah.
And he surfed big waves all over the world. He's the first guy with his partner, Seth Warren, who ever paddleboarded 225 miles of the Colorado River, rapids and all.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
he's done some crazy stuff. Um, so for him to say he was scared,
Yeah.
it was an oh shit moment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so we were on the phone till about 3 in the morning, and finally he said, "I have to hang up." And I was afraid he was going to die. And I said, "Please text me as soon as you wake up." So the next morning at 7 a.m., I get a text. It says, "I'm alive." And I was like, "Oh, thank God." So I'm getting dressed, and I'm going to drive to the hospital, even though I wasn't allowed in. The doctor had moved him the night before into a room with a window, the only room with a window in the COVID unit.
Mm.
And so my plan was to drive to the hospital and talk to him on speaker while I stare at him through the window.
Yeah.
About an hour later, after getting the text that says, "I'm alive," I get another text. It says, "Something's wrong. I can't breathe." And I could hear, I could read the panic in it. So I called the nurse's station, and I drive to the hospital really fast with my sister-in-law in the car with me. And we're standing outside the window. And this is the moment where he has to go on the ventilator. He can't breathe. Even they had the oxygen, they had the blower on, like they're giving him everything they've got. And they said, "We have to put you in a coma." And it was the most horrible thing. I had to say goodbye to him through this window.
Yeah.
And, at this moment, the person, we love each other so much. I mean, we're really blessed to have this relationship. And I just thought this is the last time I might ever hear his voice.
Yeah.
And what do I say to him? How do you tell somebody that you worship, literally worship the man that he is, how you feel about him in these last moments? And there are no words.
Yeah.
All I could say is, "I love you," over and over again. I just couldn't. And I didn't want to cry. I did not want his last conversation with me to be sad of me crying. So I would not cry.
Mhm.
And I just told him I loved him and that we were going to be okay. And he was at first sad, but then he made a decision and he said, "You know what? I'm going to make it. I'm going to get through this." He said, "I'm going to be okay." And then his energy came up and he made this decision that he was going to be okay. And I said, "I'm going to be outside this window every day until you come out of this coma." And we hung up the phone, and thank God I didn't know what was going to happen next because I don't think I would have handled it.
Yeah.
It just got worse from there. A few days later, his right lung completely collapsed. And the doctor asked me to have a meeting. And it was the first time in 3 weeks that I got to meet the doctor in person outside on these cold concrete benches in the cold weather.
They wouldn't even let you inside the hospital?
No,
Wow.
not at, not at this time. And then the doctor met with me and he said, "Look, his lungs collapsed and um, we want you to sign this. We want you to sign this paper, in a couple days. If he doesn't improve, we want to pull life support because he's suffering. Mrs. Brophy, you are the only thing that can stop the suffering by signing this paper." Basically, that's basically what he said to me. And I thought about it for a moment and I was like, "Oh my God, he's suffering and I can stop that."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Nope, nope, not going to do it. I'm not going to do it." I had made a decision a few days prior to have faith no matter what. And it's really hard to have faith when things just keep getting worse. A few days later, I got another phone call. The other lung is now collapsing. Now, as we know, you can't live with two collapsed lungs. And the doctor said, "Look, the only chance he has is a lung transplant." So then this whole thing took another turn. And he said, "But the lung transplant, your husband's 50 years old. They're only giving them to younger people right now. And so, it's going to be hard getting him accepted." And out of 8 hospitals, 7 of them turned him down. So the last one, now you're gonna find this interesting. The last hospital was this hospital in LA, USC Keck Hospital, who was considering taking him. Now, mind you, at this point, it's the only chance he has to live. He's still in a coma. He's on the ventilator, losing weight day after day, getting, still on these horrible drugs. Um, and so I'm believing it at this point that it's the only chance he has to live. So then the doctor says to me, "But you have to understand, Maria, when you sign him over for this hospital transfer, you give up all your rights as an advocate."
What?
I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You don't get to ask for anything." Because I had been asking for high dose vitamin C. I'd been asking for all these alternative treatments, which, by the way, he did give in to the high dose vitamin C. And later, another treatment called a Viptidil, which we can get into if you want to. But
Mm.
at this point, he said, "You give up all rights." And
Oh my God.
they don't allow visitors, so you won't get to see him
And this is when you were considering transferring him to another hospital
for a possible lung
for a
transplant.
possible. And well, I will say that I mean, none of that is true, of course. You don't, that none of that is true, but they will say absolutely anything to avoid you transferring out of their hospital. Absolutely anything.
Well, I'll tell you, this doctor wanted Drew out of his hospital.
Well, that's
He
interesting then that
wanted
he would
him
say
out.
that.
He wanted him out so bad. When you read my book, it'll make more sense because it goes deep into the details. Wanted him out because at this point, Drew had been on the ventilator for a few weeks. Now, at this point, now I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing they've lost a lot of money at this
Yeah,
point.
I was going to say they've maxed out on
Yeah.
their incentive payment, and
Yes.
that's what was happening, and that's what I was seeing is that from test to toe tag from a COVID admission was worth, and depending on the state you lived in, close to a $500,000.
And
And
I'm going to say something else.
when that run ran out, then it was kill them and fill the bed with a new victim.
And one other thing, I do believe this particular doctor, Dr. Q, I do believe he cared about Drew. He came to care about him, although he still was, handcuffed by the COVID protocols and all that stuff. He knew he thought he couldn't save Drew, and he wanted him out of the hospital. And he thought if there's any chance in hell, we got to transfer him to this other hospital where he's going to get a lung transplant. But then he said something to me after he told me I'd lose all rights. Then he said, and the hospital wanted to know, they had a question. Is Drew a COVID denier? And I said, and I had never heard that term. This was the first time I'd ever heard it. And I said, what does that mean? And I looked at the doctor. I'm in the room. At this point, I'm allowed in, and Drew had been transferred to CICU. So at this point, I'm in the room with the doctor, and I was all confused. And I said, what does that mean? He said, it's somebody who doesn't believe in COVID. And I pointed to Drew's comatose body and I said, look at him. You think he doesn't believe in COVID?
Right.
I said, but that was when I got my first inkling that that hospital in Los Angeles was bad for Drew. So then, so everybody's still trying to get Drew accepted. And my whole family, Drew's family, everybody thinks this is his only chance to survive. But now I'm starting to have my doubts because I'm not going to be allowed to see him. I'm not going to be allowed to ask any questions. They're going to shut me out. And now they think Drew's got these political views that they don't like. And they have an issue with it. And it's really a lot of big red flags to me. But the final, so one night, I'm at home with my son Dylan, who was 19 at the time and very smart. He was helping me make a lot of medical decisions. He's a chemist and a software engineer, super smart kid. And my good friend Raz at the time. So the two of them were there, and the phone rang, and it was 9 o'clock at night, and it said hospital. And I thought they were calling to tell me Drew died. And I was like, oh my God. I answered the phone and I put it on speaker so Dylan and Raz can listen in with me. And the three of us are huddling around my phone. And it's Dr. Q. And he said, well, I've got good news, Maria. And then he talks really fast, like he's hopped up on something, right? And fear is what I think it was. He's talking really, really fast. And he's saying, okay, so they say they're going to take him. They're about to accept the transfer, but they want to know one thing, Maria, and it's a simple yes or no answer. And I want your answer right now, Maria. And I was like, my heart was racing. And I was like, this doesn't sound like good news to me. There's something creepy here. And I said, what? And he said, they want to know if you'll go get vaccinated tomorrow.
If you'll go get you will go get
Yes.
vaccinated.
Yes.
Not Drew, you.
And I went quiet, and my friend Raz, who's in the room with me, she all of a sudden goes, and I just like put my finger to my lips for her to be quiet. She was shocked, and Dylan's shocked, and we're just looking at each other like, what the hell? And I said, why? And he said, we need you and anybody that's staying in your house to get vaccinated. And I said, well, doctor, you know why I didn't get vaccinated, right? Like, I mean, obviously you wouldn't know. How would you know? I said, I had 3 different doctors tell me not to because I have Hashimoto's autoimmune and I have a lot of sensitivities to, I can't take anything. I can't even take Advil. My body's super sensitive.
You know, Maria, I'm going to stop you right there because we are up against a hard break. But when I come back, we're going to dive right back into this really important part of the story.
Okay.
America Out Loud Talk Radio plays on the iHeartRadio network. You can also listen on our media player from any web browser, anywhere in the world. We have the best in class apps available on Apple, Android, or Alexa 24/7. Great Talk Radio. All of our shows go to podcast the following day. You can hear them on apps such as Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, iHeart Podcast, and many more. Be sure to subscribe and rate the show on Apple Podcasts for me. Don't forget to check out our online store at americaoutloud.shop, where you can find all of the products that we represent on our network at a discounted rate, including an incredible line of products from Chemical Free Body. Unlike the majority of supplements you'll find on the market today, with Chemical Free Body, you won't have to worry about harmful ingredients, binders, fillers, or flow agents. Their ultra-safe breakthrough nanosilver technology destroys pathogens, balances the microbiome, and boosts immunity. All of these products are proudly made in the USA and are backed by an unheard of double your money back guarantee. I've made a twice daily Green 85 drink part of my routine, which has led to a decrease in belly bloat and an increase in my energy throughout the day. Use promo code OUTLOUD to save 20% off the Healthy Gut Bundle. I'll catch you on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Looking for a fluoride-free, peptide-based toothpaste? Try Smile from the Wellness Company. This doctor-formulated formula combines powerful peptides, remineralizers, and probiotics to rebuild gum tissue, strengthen teeth, and fight harmful bacteria, all with a refreshing mint flavor. Visit twc.health/outloud and use code OUTLOUD for 20% off your first order.
Struggling with your health, energy, and constantly feeling hungry? Want to save money on the rising cost of groceries and dramatically improve your health? Go to chemicalfreebody.com/outloud today. Get nature's super multivitamin, doctor-formulated Green 85 juice formula, empower your immune system, cut your grocery bill, and save 20% on your first order.
Have you been looking for a healthy snack for on the go, but all the energy and protein bars are just too sweet and full of sugar, preservatives, and mystery ingredients? Well, not all energy bars are soft and sugary. Bear Bars are a crunchy, savory bar made from just 6 simple natural ingredients. Made with veggies, nuts, and seeds, Bear Bars are plant-based, organic, gluten-free, contain 6 grams of protein, and are low-temp dried for a unique crunch. To learn more, just visit bearbar.com/outloud and get the exclusive discount just for America Out Loud listeners. That's bearbar.com/outloud.
Well, it's high time Americans refuse to be pawns in the human chess game. Under the name of diversity, politicians divide the people in their quest for power. Well, diversity of opinion and expression is as American as apple pie. Now is our time, my fellow Americans. AmericaOutloud.news. Liberty and justice for all.
Welcome back to Nurses Out Loud on America Out Loud Talk Radio. I'm your host, Nurse Kimberly Overton. Wherever you're listening from today and whatever you're doing, I thank you for giving me the gift of your time. Be sure to make AmericaOutloud.news your daily stop for all the latest news and happenings. We all must do our part and share the stories, the articles, the podcasts, and videos so we can help secure America's future. If you're just joining us, I have been talking with Maria Brophy, wife of Drew Brophy, and the author of a new memoir, COVID, a Love Story. Maria, thank you again for being here with me today. So just to kind of jump right back in, we were talking, I'm sorry, we were kind of just talking because there's just so much to cover and, we almost missed our break there. So sorry to have cut you off. But you were talking about the fact that when they were considering Drew for a transfer for a possible lung transplant, that they were trying to get you, not Drew, but you to get vaccinated. Is that correct?
Yes. And anyone who was staying in my house, because I had some family members staying,
Did they
my
give you
son being one of them. My son didn't live with us. He was just visiting at the time, and they wanted him vaccinated also.
Did they tell you why? Because it's interesting to me because since the shot didn't prevent transmission, what difference would it have made?
They didn't. They believed, somebody had a gun to this doctor's head.
Yeah.
Because the way he was speaking, there was a lot of, his voice was shrill. He spoke very, very fast. And he normally didn't do that. And it was like he was panicked. And, I don't want to guess what that's about because I can't. I can't guess what that was about. All I know is he was pushing me. And when I told him three of my medical doctors, which is the absolute truth, my general practitioner, my endocrinologist, and my holistic doctor, all three of them told me don't get the shot because it could put you in the hospital.
Yeah.
He didn't care. He wanted me to go get it the next day anyway. And so there's more to the story, and I know we're limited in time. I go into a lot of detail in my book about it, but the I ended up not doing it. And and the weird thing is he never mentioned it again, which is really interesting. I told him on the phone I would, but then I didn't.
Yeah.
Sometime later, I want to say a week later, I prayed very hard for God to make the best thing happen for Drew because the hospital in Los Angeles was still planning on taking him. And now I knew in my gut that it was going to kill him, that he would die in transfer. I don't know how I knew that. I'm not a doctor, but I knew it. I knew he would die in transfer. And one day I just broke down and cried and I prayed and I said, God, I can't make this decision. Like I know I could go to the doctor and say no to the transfer because I was in control. I was the advocate. I could say no. But I asked God to make the decision for me. And the craziest thing, it wasn't even 2 hours later. I get on the phone with the nurse in the ICU, and the nurse said, I've got some bad news. USC decided not to take Drew after all. And they all thought it was bad news, but to me, I was like, I literally got on my knees and said, thank you, God.
Yeah.
I knew it was wrong. And luckily,
Can I ask you a question that was Drew vaccinated?
he was not vaccinated. And, I asked the doctor on that phone call, are they going to make Drew get vaccinated? And the doctor said, no, he has to wait 90 days before we can vaccinate him.
Which is true because they would have to wait 90 days after an active infection before they would consider vaccinating. However, they were not allowing people on the transplant list unless they got vaccinated. And I'm talking about immune compromised individuals. I remember they had one child that didn't even have a spleen, and they were trying to force vaccinate this child to get a heart transplant.
Well, it's crazy they're doing that because one of my closest friends, she had a kidney transplant 10 years ago and it took beautifully. She lives a fully healthy life until she got the COVID shot. I don't know which shot she got, but this was summer of 2021. We were all on vacation together. And she was in the bathroom and she was bleeding really bad. She had to go to the ER. We were in Waco, Texas at a surf park when this happened and far from home. She almost died. And her doctor, her kidney doctor, whoever helped her with her transplant, told her in hindsight, he said, I should have never let you get that vaccine.
Yeah.
He told her that. He said, because it made her body reject her kidney where it had taken many years prior.
It was honestly the complete and total destruction of immune systems is what we were seeing over and over again. And with each subsequent shot, it was damaging the immune system a little bit more and a little bit more.
Yeah, so I don't know why they're still doing that because it's crazy. But yeah, so anyway, they did harass Drew to get the shot after his 90 days was up and he was still in the hospital. He was transferred to an LTAC after, I want to say it was 10 or 12 weeks. And this LTAC was just horrible, but he, the one of the respiratory therapists was amazing, and she got him off the ventilator after 70 days.
Wow.
And usually that doesn't happen. Like
No.
usually they stop trying at 60. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so they didn't even trach him at this point?
They did trach him, yes.
Okay.
He was trached at 28 days.
Okay. Which is really what we were used to seeing was trach after like 3 or 4 days. We had never seen them wait 28 days before traching a patient, keeping them on that ventilator. That's not anything that we had ever seen as ICU nurses prior to COVID. And then suddenly we were seeing patients left on ventilators for like months if they lived that long.
Well, he was on the edge of death so many times. He actually did die. He had a near death experience, which has changed both of our lives. I mean, this whole thing did, but his near death experience, I think, had the greatest impact on both of us. The experience that he had on the other side, which is a whole nother story. Um, but he lost 100 pounds, was completely paralyzed when he came out of that coma, couldn't talk, eat, or move. I couldn't talk or eat for months. Um, he finally could write, so he could communicate by handwriting about a week after he was trached. When they started putting turning down the sedatives. But he got multiple infections. Quite a few of them almost killed him. It's an absolute miracle he lived through this. He should not be alive. He should have died multiple times.
Yeah.
And I think a part of it is we were supposed to go through this to tell this story, to give people hope and to be witnesses.
Yeah.
I'm a witness from what went on the outside of those hospital walls, and he's a witness for what all these poor patients went through before they died.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so does he remember any because I've had patients that
Yes.
were sedated and they, after they will tell me that they have, if they're even like peripherally aware, they can remember hearing
He
things and
remembers.
and they are just traumatized. How is he dealing with
He
those
remembers a
memories?
lot, yes.
Yeah.
And he was very traumatized. Luckily for Drew, he has a very strong mind, strong body, and strong will.
Yeah.
So he escaped the traumatic brain injury that most COVID patients got from the drugs they put them on.
Yeah.
So, many of them got TBIs. Another nurse that specializes in that explained it to me how the drugs do that. They cause traumatic brain injury. Which explains why a lot of COVID patients who survive the ventilator have anxiety.
Mhm.
Luckily, Drew does not have that. He did when he was going through withdrawal and everything, but he doesn't have that anymore. So he's doing great. He shares this story a lot. He likes to share the story of how to get through hard things with people who have had strokes and heart attacks and things like he's become a magnet for people who are surviving their own issues. And he's become like the poster child of hope for beating a really awful medical system.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to do a follow episode and have you bring Drew on with you. I would love to have you
Yes.
both on and really listen to his firsthand lived experience, especially for me, as an ICU nurse that was caring for COVID patients. It's really important for me to hear from because most of my patients, Maria, died. Most all of them died. I think I remember two or maybe three of the patients that came through during that time that even survived it. So to say that Drew is a miracle is really not overstating anything. He is truly a walking miracle.
And it took so many people. We had friends that worked in the first hospital that I believe that's partly why he wasn't, he didn't die. Is those people that helped us that would check on him and keep the doctors on their toes.
Yeah.
One of those friends is a respiratory therapist, and he actually was so disturbed by some of the things that were happening that he wrote a letter to the CEO of the hospital, his boss,
Oh, good for him.
basically, and got fired later. Um, yeah, he got fired, and he knows that's why. Um, there were many angel nurses that saved Drew's life by going against doctors' orders. And I witnessed this time and time again. And I noted it, and I know who they are. And I'm forever
Yeah,
grateful to them. Forever
absolutely.
grateful.
Yeah, I think it's so important to understand, like, as and people think this, that we are just to take doctor's orders and we don't have any say in that. We're just, that isn't the case. We don't take orders when they are not safe for our patients. So we always need to, as nurses, be standing in the gap for our patients because we are that last line of defense for our patients. And I mean, the third leading cause of death in this country is preventable medical error. And it's our job as nurses to look at these orders and say, I don't think that's a good idea. And when we question it and they say, go ahead, we don't carry out orders that we know are going to be harmful to our patients. We don't do that, or we shouldn't
Well,
be doing that.
and the reason I fought like a dog for alternative treatments, and I won some of those battles, I lost most of them, but I was the biggest pain in the butt
Hmm.
to Drew's doctors.
Good.
But his main pulmonologist, Dr. Q at the first hospital, when Drew was about to be discharged to the LTAC, Dr. Q looked at me and said, I want to thank you, Maria. Thank you for being such a strong advocate for Drew.
Yeah.
I almost fell over. I was like, oh my God, I was the biggest pain in the butt to you. I can't believe you're thanking me right now. But the thing I have a conflict. Okay, I have this inner conflict. I know what I saw.
Yeah.
I know what I witnessed. I know what I recorded. I recorded everything. And I there were some nefarious things going on. My conflict is I know that most of the people, not all, most of the people that work in hospitals want to do their best for their patients.
Yeah, that's true.
Some of them some of them saw, oh, 1.6 million people died from this protocol. Maybe
Yeah,
we
at
need to
some
do a little
point.
something different.
Yeah, at some point, I try to give a lot of grace in the beginning, but at some point, their silence is complicit, and it's a problem. So I try to give them a pass in the beginning. It was a lot of confusion. We didn't know what was happening. Most people, myself included, we thought we were doing the best we could for our patients. But when you start to have your eyes opened and you continue to stay silent and you continue to administer a medication that you know is harmful to patients, there's a problem there and you are complicit. And I start calling it out for what it is. Um,
Well,
you
and
give
I've
them as much grace as
hesitated
you can.
because I've gotten criticism from people who are like, oh, you don't appreciate the people who saved your husband's life. And I'm just like, yeah, you gotta, if you knew all the details,
Right.
you know who the real lifesavers were. And I'm not saying the doctors didn't do anything. But anybody that followed a protocol that didn't work and that was deadly, they weren't doing their best.
No,
And
exactly.
that's why I fought. I had a family member who kept saying, Maria, trust the doctors, trust the doctors. What's wrong with you, Maria? And that was the answer. I kept saying, well, look, it didn't work for 1.6 million people. I mean, I think that's how many died, right? 1.6,
Hmm.
maybe I don't have that number right, but it was a lot of people that died in this country. If it didn't work for them, why is it going to work for him?
Yeah.
And then I started, researching who is saving lives. And what are they doing? And I found out it was high dose vitamin C. And I also found out there's a drug called a Viptidil that repaired the lungs of a lot of ventilated patients. And so I fought for a Viptidil and I did win that battle. It was a little late, but I won that. And I believe it's why Drew is not only off the ventilator, he's now off the oxygen, which they said he'd never get off. Don't even try.
Yeah.
And he's now surfing big waves again. I mean,
Oh, that's
big
amazing.
waves.
That's amazing to hear. I'm so happy to hear that. Because that was my next question is where, is Drew today? And we're running out of time. Like I said, we're definitely going to have you and Drew come back on the show and get a follow-up on this. But I want to tell, if you will share with my listeners really quickly, where can they find your book or more information about your story?
Okay, so they can go to my Instagram. That's the first thing. And it's just my name, Maria Brophy, Brophy. Or you can go to my website where you can see all my books. And it's listed on there. It's mariabrophy.com.
Okay, great. And I will make sure that we include links to your website, to all of your social media handles, and a link to directly purchase the book, COVID, A Love Story, will be in the show notes that will accompany this episode once it goes to podcast. Maria, thank you so much for having the courage to share Drew's story and your story, and to be able to be a beacon of hope for others who are fighting this battle, and to let them know that they're not alone in
Thank
this,
you.
what they see and what is going on all around us. It's so important for courageous voices like yours to keep pushing forward. You are so appreciated. Thank you so much for being here, Maria.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly.
And that is all the time that we have for today, friends. But remember, we are here on the air 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, with a different nurse host daily. You can also catch the encore at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please be sure to tune in and listen to myself and these courageous nurses. As we walk you through all of these hot topics, we will empower you with information and education. We will advocate and we will stand in the gap for you, because we are nurses and this is what we do. I'm your host, Nurse Kimberly Overton, and you can find me here every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Until next time, be safe, be well, and God bless. Remember, we are in a war for truth. We're putting out a bounty on the real misinformation and exposing the purveyors of propaganda. No topic is off limits as we shine our lights and expose the darkness.